Paul George is making the Tobias Harris contract with the 76ers not look so bad. Let's jump right into it right here on Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On 76ers. If you want to vent with us here on this podcast, well, now is your chance after the 76ers fall 100-96. Keith Pompey, 76ers beat writer. I'm Kayla Santiago, sideline reporter for the Philadelphia 76ers NBA G League affiliate in the Delaware Blue Coats. So we're going to start right off the bat with Paul George having a huge opportunity to showcase how he can implement his scoring on the offensive game plan. No Joel Embiid, no Tyrese Maxey. Sixers fall to the Nets 100-96. Keith, he had 2 points in the game. It is crazy to even say that out loud.
Yeah, I mean, it is. And then Kayla, you're right. This is the game, like before the game started. I mean, we knew that Joel Embiid wasn't going to play like earlier in the day. You had an idea he wasn't going to play yesterday based on how relaxed he was in the locker room. And he just didn't seem like he was in the rush to hop on the train with the team to come up there to New York, come up here to New York. And then you hear about Maxey not playing, and you're saying to yourself, okay, Paul George never got the ball the way that he wanted to. He basically said, he admitted that it's like a struggle right now, adjusting the plan to Joel. And you look at it, and this is going to be the game where he's just going to go off. And in the first quarter, the first half rather, Paul George had 0 points on 0 for 2 shooting, right? Actually, it ended up being 0 for 3. And he ended up with 2 points on 1 for 7 shooting. Now, he had 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 3 blocks, and 3 turnovers, right? And 30-plus minutes. And the last shot of the game, he passed it up and passed it to Justin Edwards, who missed it. Paul, to me, I looked at it like, dude, this is your time to be the man. And there was times where you looked at it, his shot, he missed shots. There was times where it felt like he couldn't get past people. But again, you have to continue to be aggressive. Now, when you talk to Paul after the game and you ask him what happened, and he says, they just blitzed me anytime I had the ball. Whenever it was in pick and roll, or whether it was in pick and roll, or whether I had it up top, he said, I tried to just counter with playing through my teammates, try to make the game easy. We got good shots for the most part. It just wasn't enough shots made. Now, Kelly Oubre had 30. Quentin Grimes had 30. However, in my opinion, this was a game where Paul George was supposed to take over. He did distribute the rock like he said to people, and he did do certain things. But Nick Nurse even attributes that, like even agrees that there were certain times where PG had some shots and he passed them up. But Nick, giving him credit, was talking about how he was being double teamed and all this other stuff. But Kayla, I was expecting much more from PG last night.
I was too. And, we consistently have talked about how do you get Paul George within this big three? That's something they need to do going forward if they want to get into the play-in on the outside looking in right now that they are and compete to get to the play-in to that first round of the playoffs as well. So what you do in the last game is you take away from Tyrese Maxey's game. You tried to do a little bit more with Paul George. And then last night, Paul George does absolutely nothing in a game where he is the centerpiece, where he is the guy. And I don't want to hear about the excuses from Paul George. And, the finger might be messed up and he might have been double teamed on the picks and rolls, whatever it may be. But you're Paul George. You are supposed to have a big game. You are playing the Nets. You are playing the Nets. You are not playing the Celtics, the Cavaliers, or any team like that. And you are the best player, or you should be the best player. He wasn't on the floor last night on that team. It is absolutely ridiculous when you look at it, just the lack of effort, the lack of getting up and down the floor, being able to try to have a performance out there, which he did it. The effort equation is out of it at this point. He just looks bad. And I don't know if this is fixable right now, Keith. Do you see on your side if it is? Because Paul George continues to get worse. He continues to get worse than he has been. And when you look at the floor, well, we're going to the basement at this point because Paul George is just the worst he has looked all season long. And when you think it's bad, it gets even worse with him.
Yeah, I think the thing is now, and this guy didn't play today, but you got to hope that Joel Embiid is 100% healthy when they come
Yeah.
back, because it looks like right about now, the way that Paul George looked tonight, he wasn't aggressive enough, in my opinion. He didn't, like, even though they were blitzing, try to do what you got to do to get to the foul line, right? Let them foul you, do a lot of other things. So to me, it just seems like he's content with playing D, setting teammates up, and doing all the intangibles. That's what it seems like, right? Now, again, I get it. You can say whatever you want, but to me, it just appears that he might be content right now with being the third fiddle, based off of what we saw last night, right? Because if you were alpha and if you were that guy, you would attack the basket more and you would have done whatever you could, even if you had the four shots. Now, granted, Kelly Oubre and Quentin Grimes both had 30, which helped out. But I just don't see him being a guy. And like you say, here's something else, Kayla. Right about now, they're tied with the Brooklyn Nets.
Yep.
So when we were saying like, yo, it's a guarantee that they're going to do it, you lost to Toronto and Brooklyn, which were supposed to be like, let's face it, they're must wins. These
Yeah.
two teams are must wins, and they didn't do it.
They didn't. And you know what's interesting too, because Paul George, at some point in your career, when you've, had some accolades and your playoff P at some point, the main thing that you probably want to walk away with is an NBA championship. And when you look at it, Paul George clearly came to Philly not just only for that, but also the money. But you think maybe he would come and, try to implement his game a little bit more, play better, especially when those two guys are out, because the last thing he probably wants to do through his career is win an NBA championship. But he might have just came over to Philadelphia for the money at this point. I know that's a big factor in it. But at the same time, I mean, you have an opportunity to go out there and get your team a must needed win, and you don't do anything. You're relying on Quentin Grimes and Kelly Oubre, and no disrespect to those guys, to win you a basketball game when you are on the floor. It's just inexcusable for Paul George. And I don't know how many more excuses Nick Nurse and even PG can make at that point as well, because what are you talking about at this point in your career? You were blitzed, you were double teamed, you couldn't get open, you couldn't make shots. I mean, come on now. It's the Nets we're talking about. It was just a bad performance all around. And Keith, you said it early on too on your Twitter, and you of course wrote about it in the Philadelphia Inquirer as well, which people should go check that out. That this is what you were expecting. You were expecting to have a bigger game. Even if he had 10, 15 points, you were expecting even more from that. And Paul George just did not deliver.
He didn't. He didn't at all. And I'm gonna just read this quote from Nick Nurse, and I it kind of like he was taking Paul off the hook a little bit, because when we talked about Kelly having 30 and Quentin having 30, and Nick is saying at the end that we needed points from other people. Well, those two had 30. Justin Edwards had 13. But this
Mm-hmm.
was Nick Nurse's quote. When I asked him, I said, look, Nick, because Nick was talking about his hand, he was talking about some other things and this and that. And I said, and talking about how he was getting teammates involved. But I said, but Nick, with Joel and Maxey both out, I'm pretty sure you wanted Paul to be a little bit more aggressive. And this is his response. I think he had a couple of opportunities there. He said, but they double teamed him a lot. They weren't going to give him a ton of looks. They pressured him up the floor when he got in actions, even off ball stuff. They would send two to him. So he didn't really have much choice on a lot of them to move the ball. I thought he did turn down a couple that we really expected him to shoot. But again, he's moving the ball, playing hard on D, all that kind of stuff. Did we need him to score some more points? Yeah, but we needed a lot of people too as well. Well, you got the points from other people. The fact that Nick Nurse said, I um I thought he did turn down a couple. Did we need him? That's Nick basically saying, yeah, we needed him, but it's like the coach doesn't want to throw the star player under the bus, right? So I felt like he kind of took the high road and talked about some of the things he did well. But deep down inside, in order for you to win a game, Paul George has to score much more than 2 points.
At the end of the day, too, Paul George, my takeaway for this season right now in this game really was able to allude that too, is that he's a role player right now on the 76ers team. He has not shown star quality at all. He has not shown that he can be a superstar and step up. We've seen glimpses of it this season, but he is a role player on the Philadelphia 76ers. Oh, we need help from Quentin Grimes. We need help from Kelly Oubre. We need help from Justin Edwards. Those are your role players. Those are guys that are supposed to, help out here and there and, help out and make the team better. But Paul George is supposed to be your star, and he's not a star. He's a role player for the Philadelphia 76ers right now, and that's just what it looks like. And he really showed that last night against the Brooklyn Nets as well. So it's been rough out there for pandemic P, whatever it might be. What's going on, P? I don't know, Paul George, but you got to dig deep there because this is not how you are supposed to be playing on this big contract with the Philadelphia 76ers. So Sixers fall in this game 100 to 96. We're going to break down this contest a little bit more. It wasn't all Paul George, but that was the big thing and our big takeaway from it. We will talk about it more on the other side. And we do have to tell you about WayFair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space really, really helps me out, get back to a routine, even if it's not about the holidays and after it, after you travel, after you're coming home, after a work trip, whatever that may be. This is definitely something that you want to check out. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has absolutely everything that you need at a fantastic price. I'm currently looking for furniture, and their huge selection makes it easy to find pieces that fit my style and my budget. My favorite part, the free and hassle-free delivery, even for the larger items, which is huge, especially if you're trying to remodel, whatever that may be. Wayfair's site was so easy to navigate, and I found everything that I needed to in time. There's something for every style and every home, no matter your space or budget. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your New Year's home goals with endless inspiration for every space as well. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home, so you won't want to miss out on it today. Make sure you go check it out. All right, so the 76ers do fall in this game, and it was a must-win game at that. You look at them now, they're in the same really spot in the standings in the Eastern Conference. They're tied as the sixth worst team in the entire NBA, so on and so forth. But the one positive thing, if you could take it away, is Quentin Grimes and what he's been able to add. So the biggest thing late in the game, he's not giving up on the play. He goes up for the layup, then gets the steal, gets another one, tries that three at the end, of course, doesn't connect. But these are the role players, Keith, that you want within the Philadelphia 76ers. You want a Kelly Oubre out there. You want a Yabu, a Justin Edwards, a Quentin Grimes. Those guys played their roles last night against the Brooklyn Nets. And Grimes definitely is a ball player. He's somebody who also had a solid start in the beginning of the game as well. What do you take from his performance really so far and what you were able to see last night?
I was extremely impressed. It's funny. I'm impressed, Ro, and like this one guy keeps raving over Quentin, and I'm like, yeah, but I like Caleb Martin better, like as a better player. Just getting his underneath the guy's skin. And here's the thing: they're both they're very good players, right?
Yeah.
And you look at it, they want to utilize them similarly in roles. I think Quentin is a little bit more of a offensive player though, but as far
Yeah.
as defensive, and it looks like that moving forward that he'll probably be in the starting lineup, replacing Justin Edwards, right? But here's the big takeaway. First of all, this was only what his fifth game, whatever, fourth or fifth game. Nick Nurse has a lot of confidence in this guy, a lot, and he's you know giving him the ball, allowing him to do things. The big takeaway to me was he got the thing started, and then he was the reason why they were able to come back and get into the game. They were down double digits, and he kept playing hard, getting buckets, getting steals, doing all types of stuff. And he's the reason why they had a chance to at least tie the game late. You know what I mean? So I'm extremely impressed with him, really, and especially the way that he's been able to adapt. And what he said after the game is, you know what? Everyone runs the same stuff. It's just different terminology, which is true. But at the same time, he's coming in here and he looks like he's been a steal of the trade for the 76ers, especially with Caleb Martin not able to play right now. And the fact that he's able to come in and do what he's doing is extremely impressive.
And it's interesting because you think if you make a trade like that and somebody comes in and, he didn't play necessarily as well a few games ago, but had a big game last night, and you say, okay, he's been impressive. He's been able to hit some big shots. He's, aggressive in terms of trying to get to the rock and go up and at him and everything like that. His passing ability, too. That should enhance the team, right? That should enhance the team with Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey, but it's not. It's not. But I do like Quentin Grimes. I like how he can play as well. And I think the biggest thing, if you're Nick Nurse, when, of course, he's not going to publicly say probably anything too negative about Paul George. And I guess I understand it from that point. We don't really know what's going on. Maybe they're having a one-on-one, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, when you look at it, and Nick Nurse's response is, we needed other contributions from other players. You got those. And we alluded to it earlier. You got those contributions, especially from Grimes, a player coming in, especially from Kelly Oubre, other guys as well, and Justin Edwards. Your star players are the ones that are not doing the job that they need to do to win basketball games. And that's where the 76ers are right now. They're sixth worst in the NBA. And really, it's part of their star players as well. You can say they haven't played a lot together. You can say that Joel Embiid has sat out. And yes, that all is true. But when your star players go out there and have 2 points, it's not just about those guys coming off the bench, the role players that are in that starting lineup. It's about the guys that were supposed to bring this team far this season. And now the 76ers are on the outside looking in, going into this all-star break. And Keith, we alluded to it. They should make the play-in, and now we don't even know because they're against the Nets team that actually looked like they wanted to win a basketball game and looked like they might want to win some going forward.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I mean, the thing about that Nets team, though, I believe they won. Wow, they won three in a row and six out of their last seven games. So they're starting to play well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the 76ers are a bad team right about now. I
They
mean,
are.
because like we look at it and when they played against the Milwaukee Bucks, right? They did not have Giannis. And but the Sixers had the big three. When they played against the Detroit Pistons, they did not have Cade Cunningham. But the Sixers had the big three. And they lost both of those games the same way. It was like bombs over Baghdad. The other team was just sinking threes and grabbing rebounds, right? So now you look at it, they had the big three against what was it, the Toronto Raptors, and they blew it. And then tonight they come to Brooklyn, and we're talking about a Brooklyn team that they boat raced twice this year earlier, like just embarrassing this team. And they lose. And get this. This is a Brooklyn team, even though they're playing well, it's a depleted Brooklyn team comparable to what they faced the first two times.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, this team is bad. I mean, um, you would think that they would still make it, but I haven't seen anything that showed me that they would. And before, like right now, like this is when you're supposed to be rolling. And guess what, Kayla? I give you all the credit in the world. When you were saying, okay, Keith, they lost four in a row, or they won something and they lost two in a row. They're going to go on a losing streak again. And I'm like, but they got an easy schedule. It's not going to happen. And right now they lost five in a row, right?
Yep.
What was it? Five in a row, 7 out of 8 or something like that, or 7 out of 9 or something like that. This team is bad. And the crazy part is they're going to struggle. They could struggle to make it to the play-in, and that sounds crazy to say that, but if they keep slipping, they will. They got Boston coming up next. That's not going to be easy.
It's not. And the thing about the play-in too, when you're in that 10th or ninth seed, you have to win that game and then win another game to even get into the postseason. So that's not a guarantee, even if they get there. And I'm looking at the Nets schedule right now because that's the team the 76ers are right up against at this point. They have the same exact record. Now, the Nets, they do face the Cavs after the All-Star break, but then it's the 76ers yet again. So that's another must-win game. We keep saying that at this point of the season for the 76ers. Then right after that, they take on the Wizards, who we all know are trying to, capture the flag at this point in their season. Then the Thunder, the Trailblazers, the Pistons, the Spurs, the Warriors, the Hornets, so on and so forth throughout their season. So maybe a little bit of a tougher schedule when you look at it, but at the same time, if the Nets want to play with that energy, if they kind of smell a little bit that maybe they could slide into that 10th spot and the 76ers are starting to fall back a little bit, you never know what they might do. They might try to jump the Philadelphia 76ers. We're going to touch on that and more just in a moment here, so make sure you stay locked on with us right here on Locked On 76ers. All right. So this is the thing too. When you look at it, continuing our conversation about this team and how bad that they have been, conversation continues. Is it tank mode? Is it this? Is it that? Do they go back to that conversation? We both, I think, are in agreement that no matter what they do, they're not really getting that number one pick because there's teams below them, unless Adam Silver wants to hand it over to the 76ers, which I really don't think is going to happen under any circumstance. But when you look at this right now, at what point do you start to say to yourself, okay, if Joel Embiid's not healthy, do you sit him? Okay, if Paul George isn't healthy, do you sit him? Because the 76ers, I mean, they don't got a lot of time left to start winning some of these basketball games. They got the Celtics and then the Nets. And if you drop both of those games, I mean, it does not look good going forward. They are the sixth worst team in the NBA right now, Keith. And we can't really predict what's going to happen after the All-Star break and what they're going to do. They got to win some games, but right now it's a downward slope and we're starting to have those feelings of, okay, maybe a play-in isn't even possible for this team right now.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that, right? Because the thing is, when we look at it, to Toronto Raptors, I'm just putting this team in there right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Toronto Raptors really want to tank. They want to get one of the top picks, right? But the Toronto Raptors at 17-38 are only what? They're 3.5 games below the Sixers.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they defeated the Sixers twice this season. So if they beat the Sixers one more time, they will hold the tiebreaker over the 76ers, right? So, is even though the Sixers have an easy schedule, it's conceivable that they could get locked out. And when you talk about tanking, Joel Embiid came out and said, told Lisa Salters, he tried to walk it back a little bit, but he told her that he's probably going to need surgery this summer, right? So even though they're saying he didn't say that, but that's what it came out. Now, the thing is, if that is the case and you're looking at it, you're saying to yourself, why don't you just do it now and rest up?
Right.
Why not? Just do it
Mm-hmm.
now. Oh, if you guys are saying that Paul George can't move because he has a groin injury, he has this, he has that. Well, why not just shut him down? Why not, just do this? Let's see what you have. Maxey, oh, he has this knee bruise. His hand is messed up. Shut him down. And I think that at this particular time, I'll be honest with you, there's a lot of people within the fan base who really want them to do that, as opposed to continuing to play. And then next thing you know, you're going to have surgery or whatever and stuff like that in the off season. And all it's going to do is possibly delay the start of players coming back next season. So yeah, if they lose a couple more games, I could see it. Now beforehand, I was like, no, it's not going to happen. But I also didn't think that they would be on a 5 game losing streak playing teams that they're supposed to destroy. And Kayla, let's think about it. This time last year, heading into last night's game, they were 32-21. And we were talking about how disappointing that was.
Yeah.
Now, before this game, they were 13 games under 500. Now they're 14. This is their second worst performance through 54 games since the 2017-18 season. This is bad. This is bad.
This is terrible at this point because when you look at it, you go from having a season where you get Paul George in the off season. You go into the year, not everybody's healthy. You're sitting people out. People aren't playing preseason games. You have some hope. Then you talk about tanking. Then there's hope again. It's like a seesaw. It's just crazy how we're going back and forth here with the Philadelphia 76ers team. And you're talking about a squad that has Joel Embiid, Paul George, and Tyrese Maxey. Have they played a lot of games together? No, but the games they played, they also really haven't made a difference either. So when they go out there and play, nothing is improving, nothing's really happening. And I think you only give it a few more games before you start to have that conversation, because the same thing's going to happen next year. Oh, these guys don't play preseason games. They're still rehabbing. They're not ready to go. It's the middle of the season, and you're telling the same story. Let me ask you this, Keith, and this is something that, in conversation, just thinking of here. Do you think this is one of the more disappointing seasons in the Joel Embiid era? Because this is a year where Joel Embiid doesn't have a lot of time left in his prime. I know earlier he said he has 8 years. For one, that's not happening. For two, he might have 2 years, 3 years left in his prime, even if that even can happen. But you are expecting them to finally get past, especially what they did last year, the second round, bringing Paul George in. And I know it's not the best roster constructed team ever behind that, but at the same time, he doesn't have a lot of time left, and you are looking at a really disappointing season. Where do you feel like this ranks among Joel Embiid's seasons with the Philadelphia 76ers in terms of disappointment?
This is the most disappointing season of the Joel Embiid era.
Mm.
Now we can talk about the tanking. Like people forget, like he missed his first two seasons,
Yeah.
so they was tanking and he wasn't playing. They all knew what it was all about. The third season, he only played 31 games, this and that, like the real season. Um, the one season that a lot of people said that was disappointing before this was the year that when they had Al Horford, right?
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
that one was disappointing because they kept struggling on the road, right? Like losing games. Um, but here's the deal. Like this one was supposed to be championship or bust. And you look at their record right now, even though that season was cut short, the 76ers record this season through 54 games is worse than it was then. So
Yeah.
yeah, this is the most disappointing. And then that one was supposed to have Ben Simmons kept having back issues. They had a poorly constructed roster where you had two centers essentially on the floor at the same time. But this one is by far the worst one, the most
I would,
disappointing.
yeah, and I would have to rank it as number one too, because I think at the beginning, when people were disappointed about him not playing or the half of season, you didn't really know fully of what you were able to get of Joel Embiid yet. Now we've seen Joel Embiid become the MVP. We've seen some of his playoff performances, but the conversation has consistently been of the injuries. And I bring that up because when you look at it right now, there's not a lot of time left in the Joel Embiid era. And now more than ever, you're really starting to have those conversations of, is his body going to hold up? Is his body going to be able to play the way that he wants to dominate after injury after injury? When you start looking at Tyrese Maxey as really building around him rather than building around Joel Embiid, there's not a lot of time left in terms of what he can do and how healthy he can stay. And this was supposed to be the year that they were able to do something. And I'm not saying that they should have won an NBA championship this year, but they had the big three that could have possibly pushed them out of the second round, which is what they've been trying to do year after year in the Joel Embiid era. So this season all around, it's not just Joel, but all around is very, very disappointing for the Philadelphia 76ers. And it's shocking when you look at it, and it continues to get worse. And we said it last night, circling back to the game against the Nets. It continues to get worse because you had a chance as Paul George to be able to go out there and play without Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid, and you score 2 points in the game, and then all you have is excuses at the end of the game. I mean, this team is really, really close to saying, just shut everybody down, and that being the end of your season. Because, Keith, I maybe give it one more week after the All-Star break. That might be my limit there, and I might be saying, calling the 76ers, saying, you might want to shut this down because it's not going to get any better.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, we'll see because especially, I mean, I think it all depends on Joel too. Like, let's face it,
Right.
Joel may look at it and be like, "Look, man, we stink." Like, I mean, if we can't beat the Brooklyn Nets, if we
Mm-hmm.
can't beat the Toronto Raptors, well, how are we going to beat the Atlanta Hawks? You know,
Right.
how are we going to beat the Detroit Pistons, which already like spanked us, right? So yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for them.
And if you get into the play-in too, how are you going to have one night to be able to beat a team and then have another night to be able to beat a team before you even get into the playoffs? Those are things you look at as well if they can get to that point. But the 76ers fall to a worst 14 games under 500 on the season as they fall to the Brooklyn Nets. 100-96. Paul George, a 2-point performance. Yes, that is actually what happened, people. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On 76ers. For Keith Pompey, I'm Kayla Santiago saying so long, and we'll see you guys next time.